In 1918, you could walk into an American pharmacy and buy a bottle of radioactive water. It was called Radithor. The label promised energy and vitality. On the same shelves, violet ray wands that crackled with purple light, electric belts you strapped to your spine, the Eye on a Co, a magnetic collar, ozone inhalers, radium face cream, and a leased black box called the oscilloclast. It claimed to read any disease from a single drop of blood. One of these would later dissolve a millionaire's jaw. By the 1950s, almost everyone was gone, not because the public lost interest, not because doctors disproved them one by one, but because of a single law passed in 1938 and the death that forced it. That law was the Federal Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act. It is the reason this entire world vanished from memory. If you are drawn to the parts of history that were once completely normal and then quietly erased from public memory, subscribe to this channel. Every week, we open the archive on something the official story leaves out. Hit the bell so you do not miss the next one. Let us go back to the year 1910 and understand what was normal then. Electricity is new. It lights homes. It runs streetcars. It carries voices across wires. To most people, it looks like a force of life itself, so it is no surprise that medicine reaches for it. Walk into a drugstore. The shelves hold electrical healing devices beside the aspirin. Mail-order catalogues sell them too. Sears and Montgomery Ward ship them to farmhouses across the country. Some doctors and dentists keep them in their offices. This was not a fringe practice. This was the mainstream. The violet ray machine was a household appliance, a glass wand powered by a Tesla coil that glowed and hummed. Nikola Tesla himself demonstrated an early version at the 1893 World's Fair in Chicago. One company shows the scale of it. The Renulife Electric Company opened in Detroit in 1917. It produced 7 different models of violet ray generators and 44 separate electrode attachments for the gums, the sinuses, the scalp, the lungs. Local power companies sold them over the counter. Now, to be fair, the era was not all fraud. Real doctors were genuinely experimenting with ultraviolet light and electric current. A few of those ideas held a real seed. Light therapy and nerve stimulation exist in hospitals today. But that seed was buried inside a marketplace with one defining feature. No one had to prove any of it worked. There was no test to pass. There was no agency with the power to ask. There was only the promise and the sale. That single fact explains everything that follows. The clearest figure in this story was not a doctor. He was a salesman. William J. A. Bailey was a Harvard dropout. He claimed to be a physician. He was not. In East Orange, New Jersey, he ran a company called the Bailey Radium Laboratories. In 1918, Bailey introduced his biggest success, Radithor. It was distilled water with radium dissolved into it, sold in small half-ounce bottles. Each one carried a measured dose of a radioactive element. Here is the detail that undercuts everything. To sell it, Bailey paid the prescribing doctors a kickback, 17% of every bottle. The medicine itself was the marketing. Between 1,925 and 1,930, his company sold roughly 400,000 bottles of Radithor. One customer was Eben Byers, a Yale man, the national amateur golf champion of 1,906. In 1927, he hurt his arm, and a doctor prescribed Radithor. Byers liked the feeling it gave him. He drank close to 1,400 bottles. The radium settled into his bones. By 1931, his jaw was disintegrating. Surgeons removed most of his upper and lower jaw. Holes were forming in his skull. Eben Byers died on the 31st of March 1932. He was buried in a lead-lined coffin. When his body was examined in 1965, it was still radioactive. And here is the part that defines the entire era. While Byers was dying, The Food and Drug Administration could do almost nothing. It had no legal power to ban Radithor. None. The product was removed from the market not by the FDA, but by a Federal Trade Commission order about its advertising, and by the death itself, too gruesome for any campaign to survive. The agency we imagine as the gatekeeper had no key. Why did this market grow so fast and last so long? Follow the structure of the money. You cannot patent sunlight. You cannot own electricity or water. But you can build a branded box around them. And you can sell the box and sell the treatment again and again. Two examples show the model. Albert Abrams did not sell his diagnostic machine, the oscilloclast. He leased it. $200 down, then $5 a month, and the operator had to sign a contract never to open the case. Recurring income, inside a sealed box no one could inspect. Dinsha Gudyali sold a device called the Spectro-Chrome. By 1946, he had sold around 11,000 of them and earned over $1 million. He also charged students to learn how to use it. The pattern is consistent. These products were rarely tested and rarely proven. They were profitable, repeatable, and difficult to inspect. That is what kept them on the shelves. This is not speculation. It is a matter of public record, court files, trade catalogues, and the seller's own ledgers. Now, here is where the deeper layer begins. Step back from any single device, and a shape appears. In 1780s, Paris, Franz Mesmer sold an invisible fluid he called animal magnetism. In 1790s, America, Elisha Perkins sold metal rods that supposedly drew disease out of the body. A century later, the same promise returns as electricity, then as radium, then as colored light. The story changes, the device changes, the claim does not. Always an unseen force, always one machine to channel it, always a cure for nearly everything. The same idea, reappearing across 2 centuries and 3 continents among people who never met. You start to feel like you are looking at fragments of something much larger, not a hidden technology, a recurring human hunger. First, the violet ray. A glass wand on a Tesla coil. Press the switch and it glows purple and hums. Makers claimed it treated everything from baldness to deafness to paralysis. It was sold openly. Renulife, Master Electric, and others shipped them by the thousands. Sears and Montgomery Ward carried them. By the 1920s, it was an ordinary household object. The American Medical Association pushed back early. As far back as 1917, its journal said the wand could not treat the long list of diseases on the label. In 1950, the FDA sued a leading manufacturer for misbranding. By 1951, the last major American maker was forced to stop. A device that had glowed in homes for 40 years simply disappeared. It was not removed because it was dangerous. It was removed because the claims could not be proven, and the law, at last, required proof. Second, the electric belt. You buckled it around your waist or your spine. A weak current or just a chemical tingle was sold as the cure for exhaustion, weak nerves, and lost manhood. Pulvermacher's galvanic chain sold across Europe and America from the 1850s onward. Dr. Scott's electric appliances followed. Belts, brushes, even corsets. They were advertised in respectable magazines. The belts promised vitality. Most delivered a mild sensation, and nothing more. The current, where it existed at all, was far too weak to do what the advertisements claimed. No controlled trial ever proved those claims. None was required. There was no agency with the power to ask. They faded as the law tightened and as buyers grew skeptical. Today, the same promise survives as wellness belts and toning gadgets, sold with nearly identical language. Third, the oscilloclast. This was the black box at the center of Albert Abrams' empire. Abrams was a trained physician with real credentials, which made him persuasive. He claimed his machines could read disease from a single drop of blood, then cure it with matching vibrations. Through his foundation, an estimated 5,000 of these devices went into use. Practitioners leased them and paid him monthly. In 1923 and 1924, Scientific American ran a long investigation. Its panel sent in blood from a healthy animal and got back diagnoses of cancer and infection. Their verdict was blunt. The reactions did not exist. The American Medical Association called Abrams the dean of 20th century charlatans. The machines vanished as the exposure spread, but the idea did not die. It changed names, reappearing for decades as radionics, sold even now to people looking for an answer. Fourth, the radium products, beyond Radithor. For a brief window, radium was a luxury health ingredient. The Revigator was a ceramic water crock lined with radioactive ore. You filled it at night and drank the water by morning. It sold for the home by the thousands. There were radium toothpastes, radium face creams, radium suppositories. There was the Radiandocrinator, a small radium-coated card meant to be worn against the body overnight. The science was exactly backwards. Radium does not energize the body. It collects in the bones and destroys them from within. Eben Byers proved that in the most public way imaginable. After his death in 1932, the radium fad collapsed. These products were not buried by suppression. They were buried by the autopsy reports. Fifth, the Ion-A-Co, a flat electromagnetic collar worn around the neck and shoulders. It was sold by Gaylord Wilshire, a wealthy land developer, the man the Los Angeles Boulevard is named after. In the 1920s, he marketed the collar as a cure for cancer, diabetes, and more. You plugged it in. It hummed. A small bulb lit up to prove it was working. That was the entire treatment. The American Medical Association kept a file on it. Their investigators found a magnetic ring with no demonstrated medical effect of any kind. Wilshire died in 1927, and the device faded with him. It is a near-perfect portrait of the era. A respectable, wealthy man. A confident promise. A glowing bulb as proof. And underneath it, nothing the seller could ever show worked. Sixth, the Spectro-Chrome. A cabinet with a 1,000-watt bulb behind panes of coloured glass. Dinshaw Gadiali introduced it in 1920. Each colour, he said, healed a different organ. Green for the pituitary, blue for vitality. You stood before it in a darkened room. By 1946, he had sold around 11,000 units and made over $1 million. Then, the government acted. After the 1938 law gave the FDA real authority over devices, prosecutors built a case. In 1947, Gadiali was convicted of shipping a misbranded device across state lines. Here is the detail that breaks the myth. The prosecution did not skip the science. They commissioned clinical tests and animal studies. They called expert witnesses on cancer and heart disease. The device was not banned without evidence. It was banned because the evidence, once finally demanded, showed nothing at all. There are still places where pieces of this world survived, not the boxes, the grains of truth inside them. Light therapy is real. Newborns with jaundice are treated under blue light in every modern hospital. People with seasonal depression sit before bright light boxes that doctors actually prescribe. Electrical stimulation is real. Physical therapists use TENS units to manage pain. Doctors use deep heat, diathermy, and nerve stimulation. The electric belt was nonsense. But the underlying idea that current can affect the body was not entirely wrong. Ultraviolet light is real. It kills bacteria. Hospitals use it to sterilize rooms and equipment, exactly what the violet ray sellers once promised, though for completely different reasons. This is the honest part of the story. These inventors were not all frauds holding nothing. A few of them were standing very close to something real and simply could not measure it. They had the intuition and none of the proof. The difference is simple. Modern medicine kept what could be tested and shown to work. It discarded what could not. Every one of these survivors points back to something older, and to a single dividing line that runs straight through the 1930s. On one side, a promise is enough. On the other, you have to prove it. That line is the whole story. And so when you scroll past an online ad today for a healing device, look at how little the language has actually changed. A glowing panel promises to boost your cells. A magnetic mat promises to realign your energy. A small machine promises to detox your body through your feet. The words are almost identical to a 1925 catalogue. Some of it sits on a real foundation. Red light therapy, for example, has genuine research behind certain narrow uses. Some of it does not, and rides on the same vague energy language as the violet ray. The difference now is the dividing line built in 1938 and strengthened by the Medical Device Amendments of 1976. A genuine medical device must prove safety and effectiveness. A wellness gadget can avoid all of that simply by carefully never claiming to treat a disease. If you measure safety, the modern system is a clear win. A lethal product like Radium cannot reach a pharmacy shelf today. If you measure how easily a confident promise still sells, the answer is less comforting. The marketing never died. Only the worst of the products did. The 1938 law is now more than 80 years old. The line it drew is the entire reason this old world feels so foreign to us. There is one more piece of this story that almost no one tells. The proof that this world ever existed was very nearly thrown away. Not by suppression, by indifference. Company records were dumped. Catalogues were pulped. The devices ended up in attics and flea markets, mistaken for novelties. What we know survives, largely because a few institutions chose to keep it. The Smithsonian holds an actual oscilloclast in its collection. The American Medical Association compiled volumes titled Nostrums and Quackery, cataloguing these devices by the hundreds. Museums of radiation preserve the radium water crocks, sealed behind glass. And the most ordinary documents are the most revealing. A mail-order catalogue from the 1920s lists a violet ray generator beside ordinary hardware. A pharmacy ledger places radioactive water on the shelf next to the cough syrup. This was normal in 1925. It would be unthinkable today, not because people changed, but because the system that made it normal was dismantled and replaced with one built-on proof. These devices were removed by people who understood exactly what they were replacing. The only thing strange, in the end, is how completely we forgot this world was ever there at all. The records I referenced are public. The AMA's Nostrums and Quackery, the Scientific American Investigation of 1924, the FDA's own case files. You can read them tonight. The next investigation drops next week. Do not miss it.